New and used vehicles are expected to notably increase this year. It comes following President Trump's 25% auto tariffs on foreign vehicles and auto parts. President Trump suggested that consumers could dodge his sweeping 25% tariffs on foreign vehicles and auto parts by buying cars made entirely in the U.S. But there is one major issue with that recommendation. For more insight now, let's welcome Brian Moody, an editor and analyst at Cox Automotive. Brian, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Brian, Trump alluded to the statement over the weekend about buying an American-made car. What is the problem, though, that stands out to you with what the president is saying?
Well, there's a couple things. First, many cars are made in the U.S., whether they're domestic or import brands, but they often use parts content that comes from other places. So it's not going to be as easy as just going to your local dealer and saying, I know this car is made in the U.S., therefore I'm only going to pay this price. The manufacturers are going to do what they want with the prices to make sure that their business survives. For example, Hyundai makes a lot of their cars here in the U.S., and they're actually not raising prices.
It's interesting here that Hyundai, well, the Kia 2025 Kia EV6, 80% is made 80% of U.S. and Canadian parts, according to the National Highway Transportation Safety. And it's one of the most North American-made vehicles assembled here. So this is what the president is trying to switch around, or have these companies come in and make their cars completely in the U.S. and their parts completely in the U.S.?
Right. And so we've seen some companies already doing that. Of course, this was long before the President Trump's second term. For example, Hyundai has built a gigantic facility near Savannah, Georgia, where they will not only build the electric cars, but also source the batteries on site. That will work out well. So building the cars in the U.S. is certainly a good idea from one perspective, but many companies already do that. The issue is certain companies that we think of as domestic, Chrysler is a good example, they're pausing production on their Pacifica minivan because they build it just over the border in Ontario, Canada, and they're trying to figure out how to deal with that.
Let's go back to the issue of the parts of the vehicle. About 30,000 parts make up the average car here, as we said before. And sourcing of these parts, because when they are shipped out or parts are imported from outside of the country, that adds to the tariff here. Is there a way to get these items sourced in our country to avoid the tariffs? All of these parts, all 30,000 of them?
I don't think all is reasonable. I think a higher percentage is certainly possible. I think what most people don't realize about modern cars is that the company you buy the car from, whether it's Toyota, Honda, Ford, whatever it is, they don't make all of the car themselves. They source a lot of those parts from suppliers. So things like seats, taillights, brakes, even radios and tires, of course, those all come from a different company, and that has to all be coordinated. The big question is, if all of those things were sourced from inside the U.S., would that actually make the car more affordable? It's not clear yet.
So the administration is calling, though, for tax breaks, incentives to purchase U.S.-made vehicles. Is this an appropriate response to being able to adjust to this change?
It is appropriate because consumers need time to adjust. What's going to happen, I think, as time goes on, if this continues for a long period of time, automakers will have to adjust their prices. Right now, we see several automakers saying they're not going to raise prices. In fact, BMW says they're actually going to incur a tariff from their cars built in Mexico, and they're just going to eat that. They're not going to charge that to their customers. So that can only go on for so long, though. That's a temporary solution. If these go on for a long time, you're definitely going to see prices go up.
All right. In terms of what the president wants to see here, can the industry adjust overall here? We're talking about moving manufacturing here, having these parts moved here. Do you foresee this as a possibility in the future, or does something have to change?
Well, it's a possibility, but that's a long-term solution. It takes years to put a factory in place. So even though there may be a long-term solution for this, there's going to be short-term pains, and that's part of the problem. The USMCA and NAFTA, those were put in place specifically to address this problem, which is to have the borders of our countries be seen as invisible for the purposes of trade. Now we're going to go back and kind of undo that. So that's going to take a lot of new systems. How do we account for that? How much? Also, don't forget that some of the parts that we use to make new cars are the same parts that are sent to your local repair shop to fix your car. So those could be that those parts will go up as well, in addition to the price of new cars.
Many dealers are said to have imported extra inventories before the tariffs were put in place here. Let me ask you a question.
Right.
What should consumers do here? What should they know about the future of purchasing a car if they were considering purchasing a car later this year or next year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that anybody who was already in the market for a new or used car should speed that process up. I wouldn't go out and buy a car if you weren't already planning on it. It's not going to be worth it. You have to rush and do it. But if you're already on the hook, like your lease is expiring, or you have an old car that's about to die, I would speed that process up, and I would do a little bit of extra research about prices, but I would also call your local dealer and just say, hey, this is what I want. What do you have? What am I going to be in for? And they'll be transparent with you. And if you don't like that answer, then call another one. There's plenty of local dealers in the Bay Area that can give you a straight answer. Just call around and see what they have. But I wouldn't wait. Waiting is not going to get you much in this environment.
And they're probably looking to make deals right now to get these inventories moving, to get some money in their pockets right now. Brian Moody from Cox Automotive, thank you so much for your insight into this very complex issue that we'll be following for some time now. We appreciate it.